This short presentation is on the forthcoming Irish presidential election. At the moment, Ireland has a leprechaun as a president, a very well-paid leprechaun who's found the crock of gold. If you do become the president of Ireland, you become, I think it is, the second highest paid politician after the world, after the Prime Minister of Singapore, who actually does some work. In the case of Ireland, you just sit in the former Viceregal Lodge, where the British controlled Ireland, waffle a little bit, and you get paid a ton of money, and you're really on the pig's back. So you're a lucky leprechaun. Now, obviously, many chancers want to be a lucky leprechaun, and the current crop include a former escort, a lady who has exposed corruption in Ireland, another lady, Bunty something or other, who admits the whole system is corrupt, and she said she just wanted to milk the cow herself, make connections, and use the presidency for herself. The current leprechaun wants to go up again. There's 3 reality TV stars. There's a lady who started a charity, Pieta House. Sinn Féin, who we'll come to later, well, they have a candidate for their own strategic reasons. And in fact, looking at the field, Sinn Féin seem to be the only ones who make sense. I'll be voting anybody but the current leprechaun. So, in this race, Sinn Féin come out of it with some glory because they have their strategy, such as it is. Now, the current leprechaun, Michael D. Higgins, is a waffler. He goes on about what his father did. He's a former sociology lecturer. He writes very forgettable poetry. He follows the waffler Mary McAleese, who was more Catholic than the Pope, but has switched sides now because Catholicism is going out of favour and she needs another little bandwagon to ride. Before her, there was the master waffler Mary Robinson, who came from obscurity, won a very dirty election and gave up the presidency to get a better gig at the United Nations. Before that, the party of Eamon de Valera, Fianna Fáil, had it sewn up for many, many years, and nobody took the thing too seriously. In fact, when de Valera was Prime Minister, the Governor-General used to cycle to the Viceregal Lodge with his bicycle clips and so on, and sometimes he wouldn't bother going up at all. Whereas now we have the President of Ireland going around like pretending he's somebody, and all of the establishment parties, with the exception of Sinn Féin, are prepared to play along with that and go for the current leprechaun, Michael D. Higgins, for their own reasons. So the last time round we had David Norris, whose Israeli boyfriend had an interest in little Palestinian boys, a couple of reality TV stars, the leprechaun who just won it, and a couple of others, non-entities. The non-entity who won it, Michael D. Higgins, now enjoys huge ratings. Why, I do not know, because nobody reads his poetry. He doesn't give sociology lectures anymore, and the Post has no power in it. Bunty, whatever her name is, Norma Burke is her real name. She went into Dublin Council to get them to okay her campaign, and she essentially told them that she was using it for her own benefit, and she gave some outlandish proposals which some of the chancers in Dublin Council objected to. Now, the difference was Bunty was an obvious spoof candidate, but the spoofers who were in the Dublin council and who do very well out of it took themselves too seriously. So Bunty got a lot of publicity, but no nomination for Bunty. She will not be in the race. Here's one of the chaps, Mannix Flynn, who objected to Bunty. Mannix Flynn is a former Borstal boy. He was into petty crime as a young fella, and he turned that to advantage when he got outside. Wrote that he was a hard man, and people elected him. I think 1,500 votes is what he got, and he takes himself very seriously. He goes on about Myanmar, gets in with Bob Geldof, the basher of British fishermen, attacks Buddhists in Myanmar and so on, and he thinks he's somebody, and that Bunty is actually nobody. But Bunty is like the little girl who told the emperor, or the councillor in this case, he has no clothes, figuratively speaking, of course. The next lady, I forget her name. They are all kind of forgettable. Milligan or Mulligan, one of those Irish names. She went to South Dublin Council, and they wanted to throw her out for some reason instead of just listening to her. Bunty went and heckled in the crowd in support of Miss Milligan or Mulligan or whatever, who has done some TV shows and shown her breasts and stuff like that. From what I read up about her, harmless enough woman. I think she's on the Catholic side of the equation. Whether that's a good thing at the moment, probably a bad thing if you're looking for endorsements. Now, Gemma O'Doherty is an interesting character. I was going to vote for her simply as a protest vote. She has exposed corruption. She does tend to be over the top quite a bit in her writings. Not a bad thing, but the mainstream media in Ireland have done a more or less jihad against her and issued a fatwa, and have concentrated on hatcheting her. Now, even though the office of president is not suited for what she wants to do, expose corruption, save the world, etc., yet if she could use the presidential campaign to highlight those issues, a lot of people, me included, would be glad of her input, but not the mainstream media, who don't have to do very much in Ireland except praise Denis O'Brien and the various politicians he is surreptitiously linked with, as well as Hillary Clinton, who was involved with O'Brien in Haiti, when Haiti was shook down for hundreds of millions after the hurricane struck it. So Gemma O'Doherty is a little bit like Jesus. She'd be lucky if she doesn't end up on a cross, or I suppose fountain of border ditch with a hole in her head, as other journalists have. Here she is with the leader of the what was once the big party in Ireland, Fianna Fáil. This character, Micheál Martin, he seems to be just an agent for the other people, because he is such a hopeless Harry. Fianna Fáil have lost their chance. They probably can't afford to host a candidate for the presidential election because they've got no money, and they haven't robbed banks and stuff like that, like others, and they are a fairly toxic brand still because of their contribution to destroying Ireland. So Gemma O'Doherty is like the little boy who cried wolf when the wolf was there, and she's not liked. This other guy, Sharkey, Kevin Sharkey, I think his name is, he had a few odd jobs. He threw his hat in the ring, but then took his hat out of the ring because he hadn't got a hope in hell. There's another picture of Sharkey. Now we come on to the Sinn Féin characters. It was thought their former leader, Gerry Adams, would be the candidate, but he is mixed up, rightly or wrongly, in an awful lot of sordid murders, murdering mothers of 10, burying them on lonely beaches, kidnapping people on their way to mass, shooting them, and so on. burying them in bogs, in unmarked graves. So he's taken to writing these stupid books, much the same way that the Irish Prime Minister, I was going to say Mr. Trudeau, the Canadian, because Leo Varadkar, the Irish Prime Minister, who's half Indian, is married to some Canadian bloke, and they like to wear red and pink socks to show they're, avant-garde and liberal. And Adams likes to write these rather stupid books to show that he's only a harmless Harry, and that he's really nothing to do with all those sordid murders that Ed Holland and others, Ed Maloney says he was involved in. So he doesn't mind making a fool out of himself, and on Twitter he quite enjoys it. Their candidate, Sinn Féin's candidate, is this lady, Leah Ní Riada. Always an Irish name helps. Her father was a fairly iconic music writer, spoke Irish, and what Sinn Féin are trying to do, they're trying to turn a new leaf or put a tinsel on their past, and to marry, according to their new leader, Mary Lou MacDonald, the lesbian and transgender tradition with the Irish cultural tradition. Some British politicians who were at the business end of the IRA aren't their biggest supporters. The new wave of Sinn Féiners, lots of women, onto all the goofy things like supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, unfettered immigration, diversity, and putting a cultural sheen on that, and saying that we'll have Irish unity in 2028 or 2018 or whatever. From their point of view, there's not a hope in hell of that happening, and they're probably more interested in their pensions and perks than Irish unity. But from Sinn Féin's point of view, the strategy makes sense, as they will be the main opposition to this leprechaun Higgins, and it'll raise their profile, help them get new audiences, new supporters in the Muslim Brotherhood, the Maktoum Foundation, which is very big in Ireland, the lesbian transgender lot, keep the cultural sheen there. Pretend they're interested in women, those they haven't bumped off, and they will essentially solidify their position as the opposition to the official leprechauns and stuff like that of Ireland, the current president and all the other little leprechauns who support him. So the story then in Ireland is we have these issues like homelessness popping up under the surface, but the president won't have to worry about that. People have actually died at the fences surrounding his presidential palace, and the system will continue as before. The lawyers will do well. Little people will be murdered. Gangs, criminal gangs, Irish and foreign, will continue to keep in the country, murdering innocent women, Irish and foreign, and we will return to this issue of the president as the campaign unfolds. So that's the end of this little broadcast.